All right, hey everybody, welcome to our final special edition version of 50 Shades of Maintenance, where we're getting to chat with the ladies that will be part of the YouTube panel at WSFA on Saturday at 4 o'clock, which is I have the pleasure of being the host of, but wanted to get folks introduced to these ladies and make sure they kind of knew a little bit about them before we got there so that you could bring your own questions with you. So if we get a chance to have a Q&A session, which it looks like we're going to, you can bring your best and or send them to me and I'll make sure they get on the panel. So today we have, last but not least, Miss Ange, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and her channel, and then we'll start kind of talking a little bit. So feel free to introduce yourself, madam.
Hi, I'm Ange. My channel is Lost Ange Found. I had vertical sleeve gastrectomy surgery on June 15th, 2016. I started vlogging probably about a week before surgery, and I started watching YouTube videos, I think probably like February or March of last year. So yeah, when I started watching them and totally binge watched some people, I was like, oh, if I have surgery, I'm gonna do this.
So that you had a lot of value from the having other people do videos in that case.
Yes, yeah. Very much so. Yeah, I'm going to be totally fangirling at WLSFA.
Oh, hey, that's a good place. It's a really weird thing because you're like, I know these people, and then I've never met them before. It's such a strange. Right? I love watching people who've been there for the first time kind of have that experience. So, but yeah, so what pushed you, just to kind of give backstory, what kind of pushed you to the WLS part of this journey? Like,
so I was one of those deniers, I should say, where I was like, that's so extreme. Like, I didn't judge anyone who had it, but I always thought, like, that's so extreme. Like, I'm gonna, exhaust all of my options before I go under the knife. Because I had never had major surgery outside of getting like my wisdom teeth taken out. So to me, it seemed like a really extreme step for me to take personally. But that spring, so last March, I actually ran into a friend of mine in New York, and she looked fantastic. And I was like, oh my God, what have you been doing? What's the secret? Because has to be some kind of secret. It can't just be like eat less and work out. So she told me that she had the sleeve done. And at that time I had kind of just started like Googling, weight loss on YouTube, and like I would get some regular weight loss videos and some surgery videos. So I was like kind of exploring it. And once she was like, yeah, I had it done, you should definitely do it. I have zero regrets. It's super easy in terms of like the surgery part, not the whole process. But sure. Yeah, like essentially comforting me and letting me know that it wasn't as extreme as I had kind of built it up in my head. After that, I came back and I went to a few info sessions, and I was like, maybe this is for me, because clearly I've been trying to do this for like 20 something years and nothing has worked.
And so you're still kind of on the losing phase of this, right? I mean, you're still.
I should be. I've kind of stalled out a little. I think I might be back there too. So. But yes, technically I'm not yet where I want to be. So I'm still in process.
So that's, if you were talking about like kind of, having struggled with doing it the other way and kind of having somebody else kind of like show you that, hey, there's this other opportunity. So if somebody is coming into this right now, like they're getting ready to do it, what's the best piece of advice you can kind of give them as far as whether or not to consider this as a viable option and not some kind of quote unquote cheat?
Yeah, I would say, you have to feel good with it yourself. So make sure, put the work in. A lot of surgical programs have like a psychological component. Take that seriously, I would say. And make sure, I feel like you have to be mentally ready more than you have to be physically ready to take that step and realize that there really is no going back. Like, you don't get to put your stomach back in.
What about the mental piece of that? Did your program require much on the side of the mental piece of that, or seminars or any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the program that I went with was super exhaustive. It's one of the best programs in the state. And my actually insurance didn't cover any of it. I actually have a bariatric exclusion. So I was self-pay, which I think also kind of upped the ante for me personally, because I'm like, all right, I'm putting a lot into this, so I really need to take it seriously. But we had one seminar first, and then you meet with the doctor one-on-one, and then after that there's like a battery of written tests that are mostly of a psychological component. Then you have to meet with a psychologist and for an hour and get their sign off. There's two pre-op classes and then a bunch of post-op classes, so like one week out, one month out, and then a couple more after that.
Wow, that is great. I mean, that's really good.
It's exhaustive.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of programs, they just, whatever it is, you just check the boxes. And if you check all the boxes, as far as, okay, you had your psych eval, you're in, you're good. And then it's go time, So I think that's a big lacking piece, I think, is and then I'll be interested to see what you say on this, but as you lose the weight, there's a lot of mental stuff that comes with all that, especially if you were overweight your whole life. Talk about a little bit of your experience on the mental side of things. Not that I'm trying to belabor it, but since we're talking about that part.
I would say it's might even be a larger component than, just eating well and trying to move more. I don't think that is new news to anyone who's trying to lose weight. We all knew it before. But for some reason, it's hard to know it and then go from knowing it to doing it. And that's all this game up here. So for me, there's been, especially lately, like I feel like I kind of stalled out and I like lost my sort of internal fire and spark. And it's purely mental. It's trying to get out of those old habits and that old sort of tape, that loop that's in your head that's telling you stupid shit like, there's free food in the kitchen at work, like go grab it. I don't need it, like I'm not even hungry, but it's like I find myself walking down the hallway like, oh, I wonder what's left over. It's so stupid.
That's so true.
But it's totally mental, and like it's just trying to change that feedback loop that's in your brain, and that doesn't happen by cutting out 85% of your stomach, unfortunately.
So true. So the physical side, I mean, you've been very, your videos are very workout centric, not exclusively, but I mean, you can tell that is a big component of your journey and the way you've gone about this. Tell us a little bit about that, because you were telling me a story about even this morning.
Yeah. So I think the good things about my surgeon is that the whole office is very much about incorporating exercise very early. So a few hours actually after my surgery, I was pulled out of bed and I had to get up and walk. And there's rules when you're at the hospital, because you only stay like one night typically for VSG. And you have to be out of bed at 6 a.m. and you can't go back in the hospital bed until 10 p.m. There's a recliner you can sit on, but not for more than an hour at a time. So they're like, it's very structured in that sense. So they get you up and going. I remember just walking loops that first day and the nurse was like, oh my God, like she's so good. And this might be like kind of my half Asian upbringing, but I respond really, really well to that type of like positive encouragement. And I like meeting and exceeding expectations that are put on me.
Well, good. Another type A person like me. Yay.
So of course I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. So, yeah. And I knew I had watched enough videos and heard enough, Q&As where people who are further out were saying like, what's one thing that you would tell like a newbie? And everyone was like, work out, like get in the habit of exercise. And I think, more than kind of forcing yourself to go like to the gym every day, if that's not what you're into, like you got to find what works for you. And a lot of my journey the past few months has been kind of dabbling and experimenting with different things to see what I like. I got really into running and I was kind of obsessed with the 5K thing. And I was thrown a little bit off track with some tendinitis. I am actually still in physical therapy for it. But I think that was actually more of a mental hit for me than not physically being able to run. Was just like I had already put in my head that like that was my thing. And then suddenly I couldn't do it. So lately I've found hiking, like oddly enough, the action of hiking doesn't hurt or aggravate my ankle. So yeah, I just did another hike this morning. I wish it wasn't getting like hot as balls outside because I have to get up super early now, and the days are numbered, really. Like I'm about to have to take a hiking hiatus here because I live in Phoenix and it's warm.
I was gonna say you don't exactly live in the cooler part of the country. I was outside yesterday in Colorado. It was like 82, and we're like, "Oh my god, it's so hot outside!" But you're like, "What are you talking about? That's like a nice cool breeze."
Right? No, I'll actually hike up until like I think the warmest that I've hiked to date is like it was in 87, and that was like, all right, I'm kind of not feeling this right now.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, do you have a hard time keeping up with the water when you're like really out there in that heat as far as like constantly sweating, constantly moving?
Not too bad. My trick is the camelback. So I literally am like, I have the little thing in my mouth, like for the whole, however long it is for the hike. So luckily I haven't been too bad with the water. I recently, as in the past few months, discovered how much easier it is to drink with a straw.
Yes, we've all talked about this. You want to get your water in? Use a straw.
Exactly. It's totally a thing. Like, so like I'm such a nerd. Like I'll keep these like 30-ounce Trentas.
Nice.
For a couple days. And I'm like 4 of these and I've almost got a gallon in for the day. So yeah, the straw is like clutch.
Yeah, and it's not something I recommend to somebody who's right out of surgery, obviously.
No, not at all.
Later, I'd say 6 months in, or even probably before that, 4 months in, you could probably switch to a straw and you'll get way more liquid in. I do about 120 ounces a day as well. So
exactly. And people are like, how do you drink so much water? And I was like, I used to be super tedious, but now like with the straw, and I even asked my surgeon, I was like, about the straw thing. And his answer was like, if you try it and it doesn't make you uncomfortable, like go for it. So
that's good advice.
Yeah.
So you had talked about at one point, like repeated failure in one of your videos and the emotional toll and setbacks that kind of has. And have you thought about how you combat that now and as you move toward the maintenance phase, how you're going to combat that when you don't have like the big losses or signs of I mean, I know you're still in the losing phase, but have you kind of thought about what your game plan is going to be for that?
Kind of. It's actually funny you mention it because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I haven't had a big loss in quite a while. So, my focus, and I think this also drives the fact that I try a lot of like different fitnessy things, because I had to kind of shift my focus to those kinds of gains. So, it's about going through this journey and kind of trying to find the silver lining, so to speak. So if I'm not seeing the losses as gains on the scale,
so complicated. Yeah.
Right? I have to look for them somewhere else to get that sort of internal motivation going. So then I find myself pushing myself in other ways. But I think for me, the fitness gains, not that they're easy, but they're like, they come to be spotted more easily. I think because when you get out there and you feel good about what you're doing, and there's endorphins that help with that, and a body in motion stays in motion is pretty true. The mental games start to come with food for me, and that I have not resolved yet. That's a biggie.
I think you're smart to shift your focus to having, like, I mean, let's say you hit your goal tomorrow morning and you're like, okay, perfect, I made it. I'm happy with the way my body looks.
That would be awesome.
I'm happy with where I'm at. I mean, then it's like just the long desert of like, okay, how do I stay here? Like, like, so when you have those physical goals, I mean, like whether it's to run, 1 mile or 1 mile further or 1 minute faster or whatever. I mean, it's, at least you're right. It's measurable. It's smart. It's very smart.
Yeah. You gotta find something that keeps you going.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, and I'll be interested to kind of get this kind of compare and contrast at the actual panel thing, because I think it'll be interesting. We've got folks from pretty much every phase along the way, and sort of a brand new person. But I think there's a lot of, I think when I watch your guys' videos, I get different things from each one of you. And unfortunately, Drea, and I don't know if I publicly announced this yet, but she unfortunately isn't going to make it. So it's just going to be the 4 ladies and myself. Drea won't make it, and I was really looking forward to having her as well, because she's kind of at that real mental game space, I think, right now. And I think it brings a lot to the conversation. But we'll wait. Maybe you'll have a mental breakdown down between now and then.
I can maybe pencil something in.
Hey, pencil something in between now and next Saturday would be great. I'm kidding. I'm not saying she's having a mental breakdown, but just when you hit that mental wall, that like, okay, I've been in maintenance for a while. What does this mean? Like, she's going through stuff. Yeah. And like the stuff we've all gone through is, I think, the great thing that we all can share it and kind of walk through it. But.
Yeah. And there are a surprising amount of similarities. Like, I still, to this day, I'll go back and watch videos of veterans and where they were at this point. And there's a lot of people that kind of follow the same ebb and flow. So I don't necessarily feel alone.
That's a really good way to put it. I used to always look like somebody who was like 2 weeks ahead of me, or 4 weeks ahead of me, or at the same time frame. Somebody like you said, a veteran. Where were they at that point? About 2 weeks past where I was, to kind of keep me going.
Exactly. And I've even noticed, like, there were some people I was watching that were like maybe a month or two, like you were saying, and a lot of them have stopped, and I'm like, where are you? What happened?
That's always scary too, right? Yeah, they just
right?
Gone.
God.
So a couple of us talked about this, but did you have to go through that selfish phase to get the weight loss like really churning out, or did you ever have to get to the point where you were just kind of pushing all the other things out of your life and just focusing on that, or did you kind of find a balance early on?
I had to. So, like, I'm pretty lucky. Like, I don't necessarily have kids that I have to worry about all the time, aside from my dog, who's pretty low maintenance. But I definitely felt it with work. I've always been pretty career oriented. So when I started with the whole weight loss endeavor, work was definitely like on the back burner. And it's kind of flipped and flopped, so far down the line. Actually, there was a job a few months ago that I had interviewed for and got to the very last stage. And I actually withdrew from the process because it wasn't the right time for me in my weight loss surgery phase of my life to be pursuing something like that. So in that sense, that was like the first time I've ever not pursued a job past like getting an offer, essentially. And that was really tough, but I realized that if I'm going to take this seriously and I'm going to do this, like, this has to be my focus. And there are weeks at work where I'm like all work all the time, and I kind of drop the ball a little bit on food prep or what I'm eating or working out. But for the most part, it kind of ping pongs back and forth between those things. It's interesting also because, like, I don't have kids, but my grandma's actually living with me now. And I have noticed a huge difference in my eating since she has moved in. So she's dealing with a spinal stenosis, and she's in like physical therapy. And my house is just centrally located to everything. So she's staying with me, but it's really hard to stay on track when you have someone else in the house. And all the parents out there are going to be like, no, duh, like, hello. But for me, this is like a new realization. I'm like, there's someone else who doesn't eat the things that I eat, and I have to look at that stuff. And like, I wasn't mentally prepared for that.
That's a really good point. I mean, and I think it's important because there are people who are on their own, and when they start this process and they don't think about that. So that's a good point to bring up. I mean, yeah, somebody else is in the house and they can eat Cheez-Its and cookies and crap. You don't want to deny them those things, but you don't want to see them. Like, I don't want that temptation. So
exactly. And like, I'm not going to tell my grandma no. That's my grandma.
Right. That's awesome. So okay,
like, I want that.
So how did your friends, family, and coworkers kind of how did they kind of take your weight loss, your sudden weight loss? I mean, were you pretty open about it? Were they inquisitive? Did they notice at all? I mean,
so I'm a secret sleever.
There's many of us.
There are a handful of people, essentially those that I'm closest with, that know. And it's funny, it's actually the friends that I went out to eat with most often that I ended up telling first, because it was most obvious when I would still go out to eat with them, but I would have like 2 bites of something and I like wouldn't touch my water and I wouldn't order a dessert. And so I ended up having to sort of come clean then. But for the most part, everyone that knows has been super supportive. Fortunately, I haven't run into kind of like the jealousy monster, so to speak. And then for the people who don't know, like at work, I've gotten a few comments, but they're all pretty positive. Like, and one lady said something, I think she meant it in a positive way, but I don't think she realized that the colloquialism was kind of negative. But she's like, "You're a shadow of your former self." And at first I was like, and then I was like, "Oh, I get what you're trying to say."
Here's what you really mean.
I know. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm like emotionally vapid or something.
That's too funny. Oh man.
Yeah, and I still struggle a little bit like with the internal ethics when people ask me like, "What are you doing?" And I don't necessarily want to say, "Oh, I had surgery." But I end up saying stuff like, that's true. I don't eat a ton of carbs. I drink a crap ton of water. I work out more than I used to. So but I struggle with that because there are, especially if the person asking me is a little larger or could use to lose a few pounds, or like I know that that's something that they're probably struggling with. I think I mentioned it to one lady, but it was like, it got to be a little uncomfortable. So I was like, but you got to do what's good for you. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough, man. You really do it's funny when you're on the other side and you're like, look, I've got the magic secret, but I don't want to. It's still a lot of hard work, and it's still a lot of like, all these things are not easy by any means, but this is a huge hammer. It's like a much bigger hammer to fight this demon off with.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know when to like share that and when not to, because you're right, you can offend people, or they may not just be at that place where they're ready to hear it either.
Exactly. And I think I heard
picking on them,
Yeah, I think I heard someone else say it in their video a while back, but like by no means is this process easy. And surgery is not the easy way out, but it's easy in the sense that it is the thing that I have found that it has worked for me.
It has worked for so many of us. So it's hard for us not to say that it's effective. I mean, it's easy compared to the stuff I used to try to do, but that's like saying, well, it's easier to pick up 400 pounds than it is to pick up 420 pounds. Like,
yeah,
like they're still hard to do, but it's much easier in comparison. So
exactly.
I guess the thing, people hear surgery and they think, oh, it's an easy button. They just push the button and the weight falls off. It's not quite that simple. So I think that's why, and maybe, I mean, I don't know whether this is the same for you, but do you think that has something to do with the reason why you don't tell people necessarily up front that you use the sleeve? Because you don't want them to just suddenly go, oh, it's a cheat. No wonder it's so easy. Like,
yeah, it's that. And, to be honest, I think that's probably the basis of me not just coming out and being like, hey, I had surgery. And maybe part of it, man, you asked the tough questions. Maybe part of it,
I try.
I think it's not like it wasn't obvious to myself or anyone else when I was like 285 pounds that I was like very overweight and in need of action. But part of me, I think, maybe doesn't want to acknowledge that I had let it get to that point.
So
at least in the public space.
Right. So do you feel like, I mean, so you said you've been combating it for 20 years. So, I mean, you've been doing this a while. Did you feel like there was a point at which it just got too far away from you, or was it just you were this lifetime big, like a lot of us? I mean,
I've always, like, I like to say I was overweight from birth, which is essentially, I mean, I was born 10 pounds, 1 ounce. So I was like a big baby. Especially my mom's Asian. So she's like typical tiny Asian. I think when she got pregnant with me, she's 96 pounds and not even 5 feet tall.
wow.
So I was a very large child, and I never, in my memory, don't ever remember being essentially of normal size. I feel like I've always just been on the bigger side of things. But there was a time, I think finally towards the end, where I was just like, I can't get control of this. Like, there was, when it's easier to lose weight in your 20s, and like you can go a week and be good and like drop 10 pounds, and you're like, oh, it's going to be so easy for me to get back under 200. Like, I just need to, really focus. And then all of a sudden, you wake up and you're like, shit, I'm like closer to 300 than I was to 200. And now it seems so far away, and like, it's insurmountable. I think for me, it got to that point. And as I'm in my mid 30s, so, as you get older, like, those kind of cheats and like extreme diet tricks they're just not effective anymore. Like, I can't go on the slim fast plan and suddenly wake up 20 pounds thinner at the end of the month. Like,
yeah,
doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's, I often wonder if, having done all of those diets and tricks and things, that you just kind of train your body to be resistant to them over time. I mean, especially as the older you get. I mean, I don't know how much of it's genetics slowing down because you're getting older, or your body's slowing down because you're getting older, rather. Genetics, or you've just trained your body to be resistant to all these strains of diet. like I said, you were training it to be resistant to antibiotics or something,
No, I think it's definitely a combination of both. And some of it, I think, is also like your brain gets in a mental pattern of like diet time, not diet time. And then you fall into that like black and white of good and bad. And it brings up a whole slate of food and eating issues. But I mean, I think that like it plays a part of it too. Cause I mean, clearly, like there have been times in my dieting history where I've been able to be very steadfast and have willpower, but as quick as I turn it on, it turns itself off, and I never practiced making anything a habit. So we all live and learn.
Do you feel like you have opportunities that have opened up to you as you've kind of started dropping back down into a weight range to where you feel like, oh, I'm more in a normal place, or I'm feeling like I have control? Do you see other opportunities, like professionally, personally, whatever, that you just wouldn't have considered before? Or have you always just been kind of like outgoing and driven regardless? Like the weight didn't really slow you down?
So I would like to say the weight didn't really slow me down. It was always kind of this weird voice in the back of my head. And I feel like it did kind of give me an easier out for like any failures that I might have run into. Like if I interviewed for a job and I didn't get it, I had something to blame it on. That wasn't me not being a good fit for the job. I haven't had like any concrete like opportunities open up. I think, however, there has been more of like a mental shift, where I just feel more normal. And I'm opened up to more possibilities to just do things. One thing that I have noticed, so out of my friend group, I was kind of like the only overweight person. And my friends are all like very, very active. It got to the point, I think, that they kind of stopped inviting me to do active things. Like I would see on Facebook and know that like they all went hiking or mountain biking or like did this or that. And I didn't get invited to that, I think, because there were so many times that I said no. Because I was fearful. I didn't want to be like the one that's holding everyone behind or like huffing and puffing the whole way. And that part hasn't necessarily switched yet. So I think a lot of my friends are still a little thrown aback that like I'm the one going out hiking and I'm the one that's like, hey, you guys want to go hiking? And they're like, maybe, okay, maybe. So I'm trying to train them to re-invite me to do active things and not just like invite me to lunch.
Oh, that's good. I mean, at least you were able to kind of maintain those relationships, and yeah, okay, you got to retrain them a little bit, but I mean, that's not so bad. I mean,
right?
I think
But it's taking a surprising amount of time.
so.
And I feel
But those relationships, I mean, you were able to maintain all your friendships and things like that through the weight loss phase, and like you said, you didn't have a lot of jealousy issues or anything, but now you're just saying, hey, I can go do these things with you guys, right? I mean, that's really where you're at. You're just trying to get those things back.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think like, I don't know, I might have missed the phase where everyone was like really into doing that. And now all my friends have like, are married and have kids. And like, they're like, well, we're kind of past that. And I'm like, I'm just a few years behind. Doesn't anyone want to go do anything?
Just want to sleep. No,
right?
So did you ever hit like did you ever hit what everybody calls the mind fuck moment? Did you have that moment yet? Or you haven't had it yet?
I think there's probably a small mindfuck moment, like several times a week. I don't think I've had like a huge one yet where that's like thrown me off. But I mean, even the other day, I don't remember where I was, but I remember having the thought like, am I the biggest person in the room? Which is a thought that I used to have very frequently when I was big. And you kind of look around and you do the self-assessment and you're like, okay, is that person bigger than me? Am I the biggest one? Like, am I sticking out? How do I make myself smaller? And I hadn't had that in a while. And then I caught myself kind of going there and I was like, whoa. But then I was like, I'm not. So that's cool.
But that's wild I mean, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened to me, but it's wild that sticks around for so long. Like that's like your natural go-to. Like,
yeah.
How is your body image? How are you feeling about the way you think you look versus the way you see yourself in the mirror?
I think I haven't hit the point where I'm just like, it's so far off. And I think being physically active kind of helps keep me in the frame of mind where I feel like really in tune with my body. And I go out and kind of try clothes on a lot. So I'm trying to avoid like having like sudden sizing jumps where I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize. But there are times I think more when I'm trying to figure out where I am in context of things. So like I was traveling for work a couple weeks ago and I still did that. I had like the quick moment where I'm like, oh God, what if the seatbelt doesn't fit? It hasn't, I mean, it's been fine for a few months. And that's a fun NSV every time it happens. It never gets old.
It never does.
But that split second was still there. And like the sort of like somebody's coming to sit in the seat next to me, I better scrunch myself up. Like that kind of initial gut reaction still happens. And then I have to catch myself and be like, you're going to be fine. Like whatever. And I still sometimes find myself doing like the mental escape route. So if I'm like at a restaurant, I do the mental plan of like, okay, I would hop around that table and squeeze through those chairs. And like, that's irrelevant now. But it's those types of habits like kind of stick around. It's just like patterns that your brain is used to thinking in.
I mean, it seems like you have a pretty good, you have a good mental outlook on it. You accept that it's there. You acknowledge it. You're like, hey, it's going to be there. It's really not a problem anymore. So that sounds very healthy to me. I mean, but I'm crazy, so don't, I'm not exactly right in the head. So what do you think, how do you, and you talked a little bit about this already, but did your preconceived, let me re-ask this question a different way. Let's say, so like, did your perception of what WLS was changed, like from what you thought it was going to be like, for what you thought, even being educated on it, like the journey and stuff, what between that and the actual reality kind of is different in your mind now?
So things that I was aware of, like logically, like I knew I had heard people talk about the mental part of it. Until you live it, like I don't think anyone realizes the gravitas of that. And then also the like non-linear fashion and just the extreme differences from one person to another. So before surgery, you know, they'll tell you like it doesn't just all fall off like in a nice slope when you chart it out. That never really like sticks in. When you have your first like real stall where you go a month, 2 months, and you're between the same like 1.5 pounds, that's a harsh reality where you're like, they told you it was going to happen, but you're like, it's not going to happen.
That's for other people.
That's not for me. No, it is. And then I think, you know, especially being part of the community, sometimes it's hard not to get a little envious when you see other people and their success. And of course, like we're not evil, like we don't wish for bad things to happen to other people, but it can be a little hard when you're not seeing that necessarily for yourself. And figuring that out in your head and making it about you and your journey and what you're going through and trying not to have that like comparison thing going on. I think those are the things that it doesn't matter how much you read about it or listen to it or how much people tell you about it. Like when you get to that point, that's when you're like, oh shit just got real.
Is your do you think your scale goal has changed since you are so active, in the sense that you are doing all these things and you're building lots of muscle, and you know, and the scale has been the primary measuring tool by which, you know, you kind of gauge success of weight loss, right? But knowing that muscle weighs more and that you're very active, have you modified any of your physical goals as far as weight versus like exercise, or you still have a number in your head that you're shooting for?
I definitely still have a number in my head. I know my doctor has a number, and then I have a number that's not my doctor's number. And I think in my sort of weight loss scale, I'm probably about halfway. And I think that's still far enough out where I haven't adjusted the number yet. I'm kind of like, but I'm not steadfast in it where I'm like setting myself up to the point where if I never hit that number, I'm going to be like crushed for the rest of eternity. I'm willing to negotiate what that number is when I get closer to it, but I feel like I'm still far enough away from it that that's still the goal. And then I'll wait. It's kind of like a wait and see.
No, that's good. I think it's smart. So how many months are you into it again? I'm sorry. I know you said
like 10 and next week. Oh shit. Tomorrow is 11 months. God, that went fast.
11 months. Congrats. Yeah.
In my head, it's like, it's only been like 9 months. Nope.
Well, we'll celebrate your 11th month at WSFA on Thursday.
Right?
So we'll cheat because you're the one that's closest to WSFA of the interviews that we did. So how excited are you right now? I mean, tell them a little bit about it.
I'm super excited. So before we went live, I was telling you that I'm at that stage of like anxious excited. I'm excited to see everyone and to catch up with everyone. I was lucky enough to go to OH, and at the time I was only like 4 months out when I went to OH, and I might have done some things that I probably shouldn't have done. But so if you're a newbie and you're going, like, no one's going to judge you if you don't want to eat the green bean fries. I'm just putting that out there.
There's no pressure to misbehave like the veterans. There's the
right. That like OH opened my eyes. I was like, shit, y'all aren't supposed to be doing that. That's my internal dialogue, while like external me was like, I'll have a fry. But yeah, so but I'm also anxious because it's like now I have so many more videos, and there's that sort of preconceived notion of like, oh, you're X amount out from surgery, you should be X amount done with your process and da 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 da. And obviously, I don't think anyone's gonna like judge me or come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're not blah blah blah." That's not gonna happen. But still, in the back of your mind, you're just like, like, I hope it's good enough. I hope I'm good enough. I hope people like me. Like,
Come
still
on,
have
everybody
a
likes
little bit
you.
of that.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think that the thing, if somebody who's watching right now has never been to WSFA or OH, I've never been to an OH, by the way, and I probably need to I probably need to fix that. But you will find a camaraderie of people that instinctually know what you're thinking, feeling, and going through when you walk into a room. Then they will overwhelmingly take that angst away. It's just it's such a positive environment. You know, it's like there's so much unspoken understanding and then so much support. So if you're thinking about going, I can't recommend it enough. I think it's one of the healthiest things you can do to keep yourself energized and get into the community and you know, really be a part of it and really learn how to do YouTube videos if you haven't done them. We'll talk about that at the panel and what the value of the YouTube videos can be if you don't have local support and things like that. So I'll be interested to see the answers I get on some of those questions from you ladies. But anything else that you want folks to know or that we should talk about or delve into here?
Oh man, we could just go on and on, but in the interest of time, we'll save some stuff for the panel. But I will say, when I went to OH and I saw like other YouTubers like in person, there is a moment of like, whoa, that's so and so, or like, oh my God, like my brain is having trouble with like distinguishing seeing you on a screen and seeing you in real life, and like this can't be real. And it took me a while to feel comfortable like going up to them and treating them like real people, even though they are real people and everybody is super nice. So I would just say, if you're a first timer, like just come up and say hi. Just say hi. Like, everyone is there to meet other people. I don't think if you didn't want to talk to people, you would go to a conference. So I'll just put that out there as a final departing note to any newbies.
That is actually great advice, and I can't say it enough. And Gastric Tiger will tell you that that's how he did it. And look at how into the community he is now. And you know, he walked up, he said hello, introduced himself, handed him a drink because he was at a point where he could drink. You may not be if you're at a certain spot in your weight loss, and I would recommend you not if you're not far enough along. But everybody invited him right in. We all had fun, so it was good.
Yeah.
So, well, I want to thank you for taking the time today on Mother's Day of all days. So I appreciate it. We were I was running back here to catch you, and I really appreciate you making the time. So and I know everybody else is going to appreciate this too, because some of the folks are already in Seattle. They're pre-gaming for WSFA next week. They're going to head to Portland soon. So I'm already getting the picture. So I'm getting so excited, and
that's awesome.
I'm really excited to meet you in person and everybody else. So a couple more days, we'll be there. So
I know. So thanks for doing all these too.
Happy to. And again, I've watched so many of your guys' videos. It was like a no-brainer when we put the panel together, exactly who we wanted. We're like, oh yeah, got it. That's it. Let's go. So I'm glad you guys are available. So thank you. And everybody out there, look forward to the panel again. It's Saturday, 4 o'clock. And we are the last panel of the Saturday before the big party that night. So we'll be running for about an hour and a half. But after that, we got to cut it off because the ladies need time to get ready. I need time to go hang out with John while the ladies get ready, and you know, it's going to be a great time and a great night. So, but yeah, bring your questions. If you don't want to ask them yourself, feel free to email them to me at fatkings@ymail.com, and I will get those added to the list. And then you'll get to see Ange and the other ladies when we're there. So, thanks again for everything. We'll see you guys soon. And remember, don't define your world in black and white because there's so much hiding amongst the gray.